So as we continue to become more familiar with our site and make you more familiar with our site, it seems like one of the first things we ought to establish is the orientation on the compass of this lot, so you know what we're talking about when we talk about directions. Here's the easiest way. The street in front of our lot we are going to consider to be running uphill to the north, downhill to the south. So if you hear me say that I need to move my forms downhill or I need to move my forms south, you will know that those terms are interchangeable. East, of course, is across the street. That's the side of the street that we've shown you and will continue to use as an example of soil conditions not properly understood and how expensive it is to fix a soil problem later in the project. And west, the hill behind the property that is contributing some runoff down onto the site. So what you're watching us do is clean up the site. Got to get the grass off of here. Got to get this patch of blackberries subdued. Blackberries, Himalayan blackberries, are a big problem in Douglas County. You give an untended piece of ground 4 or 5 years and the odds are that a robin is going to drop a blackberry seed there and you're going to have a plant. And boy are they tough and boy are they mean. But the Kubota doesn't seem to mind. So you're seeing this part of Oregon on a June morning. June is the month around here. It's glorious. And it's a good time of the year to begin construction. Except I'm not ready to begin construction. I've got lots of things that I just have to understand about this site. We've introduced some of those topics, but there are more. The surveyor has identified my southern boundary and my northern boundary. If my slope is intruding on the neighbor's property, then it becomes my responsibility to relieve that harm to them. Since the slope benefits my property, if it intrudes, I'm responsible to remove it. If I built a big retaining wall without removing that slope clear to the property line, they could insist and enforce removal of it later, which would be really hard if I had a retaining wall not all the way down to the elevation of their pad. So it's either fix it now or be crippled by fixing it later, and it sounds to me like a much better deal to fix it now. That's why we brought Carl out. The southern boundary identifies that the slope of this lot on the south side actually intrudes on the neighbor's property. So this is a negotiation I have to have with him. The part of the slope that is fill, that is material that was dug out of the hill and placed loosely to create part of the pad, is and always will be my responsibility. If it intrudes on his property, it's a harm to him. The part of the slope that consists of cut, that is, the native existing soil, the way it was when God built it, that happens to be sloping on his property, is not my responsibility. And so my retaining wall could just immediately step right up onto the portion of the slope that is cut, and there would be nothing that he could later do about the slope out into his backyard without undermining the retaining wall and causing a harm to me. So I'll be soon talking to him about if he's interested in sharing costs in establishing a retaining wall down there that maximizes his lot buildable footprint and mine. This is an example of a principle that I learned a long time about your ability to influence the outcome of your building project. Look at this little diagram. On the left-hand side, I've graphed your ability to change the outcome of the project. You can see it goes from 100% at the top to 0% at the bottom. On the horizontal axis, I've graphed time. That is day one, the day that you break ground, or it could be considered the day that you enter into your first construction contract. And on the right-hand side of the horizontal axis is the day the job is complete. This is an astounding little graph, and it is entirely accurate. Today, before day one, I've not entered into any contracts except with Carl Broda. I've not hired an excavator. I've not moved a dirt worker onto the site. I've not brought forms. I have not driven stakes that locate structures. I have complete ability to influence the outcome of the project. As soon as I commit myself to agreements or locations or excavations or buying materials or anything that is directly related to the construction process, I begin to lose my range of choices, and so my ability to influence the outcome of the project plummets until down around halfway through the course of construction, I essentially have no ability to influence the outcome until I come to the end. I have to ride the horse I've saddled and hope for the best. That's why you can expect all summer, or at least the first half of the summer, to be dedicated to taking care of the problems that I know about, identifying any problems that may be lurking out there ready to bite me, and doing all of the advanced planning that I need to do to get the outcome I want. Carl and I have worked together on several projects over the years, and I've brought him out here today to establish the north and south boundaries, not for recording or for sale or anything, but just so as I'm getting setbacks from the property and where to put the retaining walls, I make sure that it's right. Carl, how did you get into surveying?
Wow, long story. I really was interested in outside work. I started with civil engineering, and it kind of was taking me more towards being in an office, so I branched off into surveying. And it took me 10 years. I got my license in 96. Wow. And started my business in 97.
So even with the entrance through civil engineering, it took an additional 10 years?
It takes 10 years, well, it takes actually 8 years to get licensure in the state.
Okay.
But I was out of state in New Mexico, and I took some schooling there, and Oregon didn't recognize that schooling. So I worked for a couple extra years until I got the time I needed and the experience I needed, and then I sat for my exams.
So would you recommend this to a young man coming out of high school? What's your general impression now after a career in surveying? What would you tell a 20-year-old young man who's thinking of what he's going to do moving forward? How would you represent surveying to him?
Well, I would say that it's fascinating, and there's a lot of different parts to surveying that I don't really dabble into. I'm a boundary surveyor. I do some topographic, some construction staking, but mostly boundaries. And here in the Northwest, we have lots of old claims, old donation land claims, section corners from the public land surveying and things like that. And just this last couple years, I've found 4 original corner positions and remonumented them. And to me, that's like a history lesson with each one. I just love it, but you got to like the outdoors.
Can a man feed a family with this?
Oh, certainly. Yeah,
Okay.
it can be a really good business. You don't have to get big. Some people like myself are pretty small business.
Cool.
So.
Well, Carl provides an excellent service. You can count on his calculations. He knows all of the people at the courthouse. He knows how to record. He knows how to get the information. I called him an hour ago, and we just hit a sweet spot where he had some time. He shows up with a plat map in hand, and his equipment's ready to go. So we're going to establish these boundaries and make sure I don't put this house in the wrong spot. That's very important.
Very important.